Right stuff here at the bead shop in Nottingham. I was just going to hop on here and show you this band. So I'm going to show you the tutorial now how to make this lovely pretty tiara. It's using our new 5mm spacer flowers from Preciosa, which are really effective for a design like this. So I hope you enjoy it. And my 0.4 silver plated wire. I've cut approximately 1.5 meters. It's a long but manageable length of wire, and I'm only going to be beading across the top section. I always find that quite often a lot of the lower section is hidden behind your ears and by your hair, so I don't tend to overbead, and then it just causes problems with hair getting tangled and things. So I'm going to attach the wire to the band about here, and the way I tend to do this is I use chain nose pliers, and I put a small bend on the end followed by another small bend. That little shape is just going to fit over the band, and it means I can just hold on to that while I then start wiring this on. So I always start with a couple of wraps around the band. You can just squeeze that together with your fingers, and that looks nice and neat, and just traps that little piece of wire in, and then we're going to continue beading over that, so you're not going to see that at all. And now we can start adding some beads. So I'm going to thread a couple of beads on at a time, because I can then just slide them along rather than having to pick up every single bead. So I've just got 3 on there to begin with. I can let those slide all the way down my wire. And then the best way to attach the first one is get the bead in position on the band where you want it to sit. Now I'm going to make the flowers sit neatly next to one another on this design, so they've naturally got little dimples between the petals, so the wire will naturally want to sit in one of those dimples, which is absolutely fine. So hold the bead against the band and then pull the wire down around the band just once on its own, and then back to the front. So that is now secure. It's only attached on one side, but because if you put a bit of pressure on there as you do it, it can't really move around. So now we're going to attach the second flower, and this is slightly different because we're going to tip the flower up. So in order to make the beads sit nice and snug next to one another, I'm going to tip that bead over, just push it into position. First one's always a little bit awkward. So the idea being it's going to mirror what's happened on the first one. So in order for the wire to come up over the flower and then down to go around the band, it's just easier to push the flower into position, and then the wire is already at the back. So again, as we did before, we're going to wrap once sort of around the back of the band, and then one whole turn around the band again. And now we're back to doing this flower. So it's just 2 flowers alternating. Let me slide the next one along. So this one you can see is going to sit with its petals tucking into the previous one, so they sort of tessellate together. So I'm going to hold that into position and then wrap around the back of the band and then once around the band to secure it. And then we're back to one of these. So pick up another couple of flowers. So this is the one where we tip it over. So you'll get into a bit of a rhythm with it, but I tend to find I just get hold of it with my thumb and just flip it over. So you can actually push it with your thumbnail and then it will just settle into position next to the previous flower. You want to make sure they're exactly where you want them to be before you wrap the wire around the back, because once you've done that and then come round again, it's really secure and you're going to find it really difficult to move any of those beads afterwards. So now we're back to just sliding one on and letting that sit next to the previous one, round the back of the band and then round the wire. Now as I'm wrapping, I'm always pulling the wire a little bit to give it some tension so that it sits really nice and tight against the band. Again, all of this, because it's the same process all the way around, you'll just get used to it. So I'm back to flipping that one over. Again, just get it, make sure it's in position before you secure it. And then back to adding more beads. So already that is 6 beads on there. They've come together quite quickly and you can see they're creating this quite effective little zigzag of flowers. Just gives it a little bit more variety on the band. So I'm going to continue adding those. Feel free to replay any bit of it. I'm going to speed up the next section. What are we going on there? Okay, so I've stopped there because that is about even. You can measure from the centre out, but I tend to just do it by eye and what looks about right, and I'm happy with that. So I just need to secure this end of wire. So to mimic what we've done at this end, I'm going to wrap a couple of times around the band. So keeping that quite tight and close to the previous bit of wire. So that's about right. I'm just going to push that up. And I'm going to cut off a bit of this excess because I had a bit too much wire. So I'm just tucking that behind, pushing it against the back, try and keep it out of the way, and then I'm just going to come round to the front and just wrap between the last two flowers. You might just have to push that down and out of the way, and then come back round to the front, and then I'm aiming to cut off the wire close to the edge of the band, so I can then just tuck that little bit of end of the wire down on the front so that it's not going to get caught when you're pushing it into your hair. So then on the back I'm just going to push that bit of wire against the band. For added security, you could always add a little dab of glue on there that's not going to be visible anyway, for just a little bit of added security, but that is nice and secure and tucked away. So that is the flower band. Quite effective as it is. However, I can't help but think that these little flowers deserve just a little splash of colour on them. So I have figured out a way to do that after this stage. So I'm actually going to get out needle and beading thread to do that bit. So I'm using white Nymo thread and a size 12 beading needle, and I'm going to use a few of the pink, lovely pink colours from the pink size 11 sea bead mix we have. In this particular batch there's some gorgeous sort of mid pink slightly frosted beads which I thought would look really nice. So I'm just going to tie the end of the thread between the first two flowers around the band. So you can do a reef knot or a 2 overhand knots just to secure it in place, and you just want to leave enough of a tail of thread to be able to securely fasten it off later. So that is attached. And then the first thing you're going to do is come up through the very first flower with your needle. Get tail out of the way. And then you're going to pick up your little seed bead and go back down the flower. Just be careful that your thread doesn't get caught around the other flowers. And then you're going to come around the back of the band up through the second flower. And then pick up another seed bead and go back down the flower. So you're just trapping those seed beads on top of each flower to create a little decorative centre. It's quite sweet and effective. I'm just going to stick with these lovely pink shades, but you could mix them up. You could do a rainbow of little centre beads, or this would look really great with tiny little yellow beads because they'd look like little daisies. And then you just keep going all the way around, up through the flower, add a seed bead, go back down the flower, and then come up the next. You always want to make sure that your thread is staying at the back of the band at all times. And try not to, like I've just done, get it caught round either the band or the rest of the flowers. And you want to make sure you're pulling the tension tight on the back as well, so you don't get loops of thread. So not only is this adding a nice decorative centre, because you're going around the back and going up through the flowers, this is going to stop any that perhaps weren't as tight as you hoped. It will just help pull those into position as well. You just keep going all the way across. Now that all the seed beads are added to the daisies, I think they look a lot more like little flowers, and I really like that effect. So now all that's left to do is to secure the ends of our thread. So very much like you would in beadwork, I tend to go for half hitch knots. So I'm going to wrap it round the band and go through under the thread, and then do that again. Because it's next to wire, it's really hard to see the thread anyway. So I'm just going to make sure that's nice and tight. And you can usually get it to slide just under the last flower, so it's really not very obvious at all. And then I'm going to slide that so the thread is coming out behind a flower, and then I can cut that off. And then, although we've already got a double knot at this end, we can do similar and thread it behind, use the needle for that, thread it behind a flower and add an extra knot before cutting it off. Let's go between those last two. Oops. Try not to drop it. Have a finished band. Now you could leave that as it is. You could fill the rest of the band with either wire or just some of the seed beads to sort of match it in. You could really do anything you like with that. That could be a base for something else, or you could add in, this is a clip I've previously made with the large petals and pip beads. You could easily make another flower and add that onto one side, or have a couple of them even. I'm just imagining this is just a lovely sort of spring headband, perfect for like flower girl or birthday celebrations or anything really. And by changing the colour of the seed beads on the white flowers, it will suit a lot of different outfits and colour choices. So yeah, lots of possibilities. I hope you've enjoyed watching, and I will see you again.